Okay, we are live. And for everyone watching, welcome back to the Keep It Wausome podcast, the podcast that brings you the most quirky, fascinating, and interesting people of central Wisconsin. I change that around every time I say it. I've got a really cool guest today. I'm really excited to introduce you to her, but first, shout out to our sponsors. Sponsored by Scotty's Ale House and Eatery. You ever go there? Mm-hmm. Yeah, good place.
Good shop.
And by Campbell Haynes Menswear. And one of these days I'm going to wear their shirt on the show because I really should be wearing their shirts. But one of my favorite shirts comes from Campbell Haynes, so thanks guys. And Verve Salon. Have you ever gone to Verve Salon?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, they're all inclusive for all hair types. So they can, all skin types, all hair types, they got you covered, and they got the products for it too.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's a little shout out to our sponsors, but I have Dawn with me today.
Good evening.
And Dawn is a poet.
Yeah, special kind of poet these days.
A special kind of poet. Tell them what kind of poet you are.
I am the very first Wausau Poet Laureate.
Mm-hmm.
What is a Poet Laureate?
That was going to be my next question. What is a poet laureate?
We're kind of figuring that out, but the Poet Laureate is someone who promotes poetry and creativity and the town or state or country in which they are a poet laureate. Mm-hmm. So it's quite an honor and a privilege, and I'm excited to start exploring that role.
How did you become poet laureate?
Well, our mayor created the position, and I saw it on Facebook, I think, and I thought, I'm too busy for that. I won't get that. And then I had so many friends say, "Are you going to apply for this?" and encourage me that I thought, okay, I'll put in the application, and then didn't really think much of it.
Yeah.
And I think the university took the first swipe at looking at the applications, and then recommended to the art commission, and they chose me.
Wow. Did you think you were going to be chosen?
No, I didn't think I was going to be chosen, but so I'm very honored because there are a lot of really good poets and a lot of people who really are connected in Wausau in this town. So
is that a little pressure to be the first poet laureate?
Well, it depends. So I kind of get to make it up. I connected with a few other poet laureates in Wisconsin lately, and just to kind of get an idea of what it is that they do, some of the things that they do. But I feel like if I do a good job, the pressure's on the second poet laureate. If I don't do a good job, then that makes the second poet laureates, they can shine.
Yeah, so you're setting the bar, basically.
So I'm setting the bar, basically, yes. So hopefully I set it fairly high.
So has this been announced yet? Are we making, are we breaking news on the Keep It Wausome podcast here?
Yes, we're breaking news. Mm-hmm.
Scandinavian stuff. You ever go out to their lutefisk dinner?
No, and I've never had lutefisk because I have a German mother. So, I've heard about it.
I feel like I'm the only person on the planet who doesn't have a strong reaction either way to lutefisk. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, because usually you talk to people and they either like really love it or they really hate it. And I've always been kind of agnostic. Like I'll eat it and I'm like,
agnostic.
It's fine.
When it comes to lutefisk.
I'm agnostic.
Well, I think it is an experience that I'll have to try. Although I think you have to grow up with it maybe to like it. Maybe.
I think part of it might have been my time in Japan, because especially the first time I was there for almost a whole summer, and it was just we were just constantly having different types of food sent at you, and you just ate it, and some of it was good, a few things were like ugh. And then there was a lot of in between where it was just kind of different. So I put lutefisk in that category of being a little bit different.
You had to try it, right?
Yeah.
Was there anything where like the texture, the smell, or the taste just really got you and you thought, no, I can't, but you tried it?
Yeah. Well, actually one dish in particular called natto, and most Japanese people love it. Most non-Japanese people hate it. And I was definitely in the dislike category when I started. It's fermented soybeans.
Okay.
And so it's like these beans, but they get, once they're fermented, they get kind of sticky. They almost sort of have the consistency of cheese.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're kind of pungent. But it kind of reminds me of kimchi, where like the first time I had kimchi, it was pretty intense, and I probably didn't like it the first time. But then you start to like really like it.
Yeah, it grows on
It grows on you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any
Yeah.
foods like that?
I think wine was like that for me. I lived in Oregon for a while, and so surrounded by wine country, and I think I had to grow my palate for wine. I think beer's kind of the same way too. How you kind of start out with the light, refreshing ones, and then you can end up with a dark one, full-bodied beer.
Well, beer is funny too, because when I was younger, it was all like Bud Light and kind of Miller Lite, you know, and all the domestics and pretty much all the flavor had been taken out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just thought I hated beer.
Mm-hmm.
So I almost never wanted to have a beer, and if I did, it was probably to get drunk, and I didn't necessarily enjoy the process. But then once crafted beer started coming along, I don't really like saying craft beer. It sounds too much like crap beer. So I like saying crafted. That makes more sense to me, you know, because it's crafted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once that came along, I'm like, oh, actually, I think I like beer. And then I found I really liked dark beer.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I used to usually steer toward Guinness if I went out to a bar or something.
Mm-hmm. It's like a meal.
It is, and I found it's better on my stomach too.
Oh, really? Probably less acidic. So what's this one?
This is the Whitewater Exalted Milkshake Stout. That's what it is. Yeah.
Milkshake stout. So
Yep.
is it a little sweet?
Maybe a little.
Chocolate
Do you want to try it?
flavors? Yeah, if you don't mind. In a COVID world.
Yeah, exactly.
That is good.
Okay, well, I didn't mean to hold it. Jeez. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I like dark beer too, although it's a lot of, it fills me up, so 2 sips is perfect. Yeah, it's really flavorful.
Yeah,
Almost like
really
a little
tasty.
coffee taste in there.
I'm gonna adjust this just a second. It does have a little bit of a coffee taste, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
It's a little
OCD.
good with my golden milk here.
Yeah, there we go. That's better. It was a little off kilter. Now we fixed it.
Here we are, rain.
So if you're the Poet Laureate, we should talk about poetry, yeah?
I guess we should.
Yeah. And I don't remember from our last podcast, because you were on, Dawn was on when it was live at Daly's. I think you were episode 6.
Yeah, early on.
So I can remember what episode you were on, but I can't remember your
But
last
it was a
name.
busy night. It was like Valentine's Day or something, and so we had all this like busyness
Yeah,
behind
because
us.
it was weird because we couldn't get into the usual room.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided to try to do it out at the. We decided to do it in the hall, in the dining room, and that was, I don't know, it was a good conversation, but the audio was pretty
It was boisterous.
pretty tough to decipher sometimes.
Yeah, this is much quieter.
It is. This is a lot better. Yeah. Yeah. So for people that are wondering, we're now in the hallway of the music hall. I got kicked out of the green room
Hall of the Hall.
because the closet is there.
Oh, that's why.
Yeah. Well, basically, there was some conflicts because they had to, if they had music, they had to pull stuff out of the closet,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is in the green room, even though it was outside. And so I said, well, couldn't you do that beforehand? And they said, well, the thing is, though, we never know what the musicians need.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we have to go back in for things. So it's probably easy. So they moved me over here.
This is comfortable though.
It is nice, and like
And it's my color, orange.
it is. It's orange, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I might take out a little of the red, I think, in post production. It's like it's a little intense, but
We'll be a little peachier.
let's do a little color correction, and it'll be all good. Oh yeah, and I don't take any audio off of there. I take it off of here. Now I know how to do that.
Awesome.
So yeah, my production skills are way better since the last time you were on.
Yeah. Oh, I think you had that mic.
I had the mic, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. Well, I don't think I wasn't even doing video yet.
Mm-mm.
No, and
No, we just took a picture.
now I've really learned how to pair the two things together and actually make it work. So and it sounds pretty good. Yeah, I get a little better every time. You know,
Big time.
big
Good for
time.
you.
And speaking of big time, you know, you're like the top poet
Top poet in
in
Wausau.
Wausau.
Yeah, and I hope that we'll have some events and ideas and things where poets can come together and share, because like I said, there are some really wonderful poets in this town, and it's such a powerful medium. Even if you think poetry, what is that? It's a way to process your thoughts and your feelings, and at least it is for me. It's sort of a form of journaling without writing books and books and books, and it's quite powerful. Each word you really have to think about, and each word has meaning, and even the sound has meaning, and I think that is what makes it such a powerful, concise. I even have one of my books is tiny poems, which I've taught that class to poets a couple of times, and they really find it a wonderful exercise to reduce the poem to even fewer, to 2 to 6 lines, and really concentrate on each word and having a message in a very few words.
Yeah, that was one of the things with poetry. Is it's really focusing on using as few words as possible, and I think anyway, it's like a more concentrated form of writing in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like a shot of whiskey instead of several beers.
Yeah, what's the picture of sangria?
It's just sangria, right?
Yeah, you can have an epic poem, certainly. Although an epic poem probably is like a 4-tome volume condensed into one epic poem. So you can get a lot of story in there. So you and I worked on, I think it was the last one I published was, did I grab it? So I love stamps, and this idea of, we talked about it last time, of stamp poems kind of came out. So I had my first collection of stamp poems, and then a second one, couldn't resist. And then the third one, actually I still don't have it. World Stamp Poems. Actually, Brian did the cover picture for me, and the one on the back as well. And it was great because it was a collaboration with stamps from all around the world, but finding people in this area or that I had a connection with who had a story about that particular country. And so this was before COVID, so when we could roam around and travel, and there was a lot of interest in travel and other cultures and coming together, and so that's when this book, that's why I guess I haven't promoted it too much, because then COVID kind of shut us down for travel.
Yeah.
So I guess you can travel in a little book, or with a stamp,
right,
or in a poem about that place.
Yeah. So when did this come out?
My golden note.
Did you ever think about just going by Dawn? Kind of like Madonna?
2019, so yeah. I don't know, it may be too common. Dawns seem to be about my age, so I'm 52. So they were born end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s.
A lot of Dawns in that era.
There's a lot of Dawns in that era.
You could be the Dawn.
I could be the Dawn.
Yeah. 'Cause I just think you as Dawn or Donnie.
Mm-hmm.
I say Donnie a lot.
I like that.
Do you?
That's nice. Yeah, I always thought when I was younger that I wanted multiple syllable name. I thought Josephine would be so lovely. But I really like the meaning of my name, and although when I lived out west I would have to spell it because they don't have the AW sound in their vernacular. So they just thought it was an O. So they would, when they wrote it, they would write Don. And I'm like,
oh yeah, that's like when some of my Japanese friends they'd spell raw R-O-W.
Because that's the way it's pronounced, or the way that they don't have that sound.
Well, there's not really an AW. You can reproduce it in different ways, but yeah, not really an AW. So I think it's more of just a mistake. He's like, oh, row, row.
And it is kind of subtle to even hear the difference. If
It
you're
is,
not
yeah.
if you're not a native speaker to the Midwest, then you might not hear that subtle difference. Oh, and that's what's so cool about, I'm gonna switch to a beer.
Switching the beer mode.
Red beer for me this time.
Cheers.
Cheers. But that's what's so neat about living in this big country is we have, we have so many different cultures within our own culture and different ways of speaking and habits and sayings and even the way that we pronounce words. So I just, I just love the study of that kind of thing. I just recently came back from Hawaii, and that, I tell you, the Hawaiian language is a neat language, and it's something you can learn it fairly quickly because it's fairly consistent. Once you learn the pronunciation of the vowels and know what the little guttural stop is with the apostrophe, and they pretty much pronounce all the vowels, and usually the accent is on the second to last vowel. So it's fairly consistent. You can learn it, and it's beautiful.
Nice.
Really beautiful.
Had you been in Hawaii before?
Not to the Big Island, I hadn't. So I had been to Maui, Kauai, Oahu. When I lived in Oregon, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump. So those Oregon folks are there all the time. From here, I'm going to tell you, it was a long way.
Bit of a haul.
Mm-hmm. Bit of a haul.
I'd like to go someday.
I think it's a place that should be on people's bucket list. What's nice about it is it's the United States, so you don't have to worry about changing money. Everything's in English. So it's easy to travel. You understand the street signs, although they do say speed hump instead of speed bump, but
really?
You get the gist.
Yeah, you figured that out pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, the language thing is interesting. When I was in Tulum, I heard a lot of Mayan, and I didn't pick it up at first, but I think I started picking up on it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So is that a revived language?
There's still people that speak Mayan.
Cool.
I don't think especially in the Tulum area, there's a lot of people who are, in that Yucatan area, there's still a lot of people who have Mayan ancestry, and they still speak it a little bit, but it's not like a main language. It's not an official language, I don't think.
But they would speak it.
Yeah, at first it took a Mexican friend that pointed out, because I went for a yoga teacher training, so I met some people who were Mexican, and then some people from other places in the world, but they'd hear it and point it out, and be like, oh, that's what it sounds like.
Do you remember any words?
Of Mayan? No, I just heard the sound. I didn't learn any words. So
were the intonations and the sounds quite different than a Latin-based?
No, I don't think it was a lot different. Yeah, it was kind of hard to decipher, to be honest. Just sounded a little different, I guess. Kind of subtle.
Yeah, I know for me, I have to see, if I go to another country, I want to learn at least a few words so I can attempt to speak their language. And so if I see it written, and especially if it's Latin based, it's easy because then the letters generally have about the same sound. What's difficult is when I was in Norway, I thought, oh my God, they're pronounced completely differently. So that one I don't think I got much
Didn't
more
get anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard in some of those countries. Germany is another one too. As soon as someone knows you speak English, they're just going to speak English to you because they learn it. The Germans are really proficient at it, and most of the Scandinavian countries are pretty sufficient. I had a pen pal in Sweden, and she was we were talking about it, oh yeah, I should, because she wanted to come to the U.S. and I was like, well, how about we just switch places and I'll go to Sweden. I'm I guess I'll have to learn Swedish. She goes, you won't have to learn Swedish.
Yeah.
She's like, I have two gals in my office from the UK. They don't speak a word of Swedish.
Wow.
And they work, they have jobs and all. I'm like, wow, that's something.
So now that you can work remotely, you could swap hoses for.
Yeah, I probably could have. Well, I can't take photos remotely, so.
Yeah, that's true.
It'd be a challenge. In some meetings, I still have to go in person, like Weston Plan Commission. I was the only reporter there, and it was kind of a big story. So we got it. No one else did.
Nice.
So it's almost possible, but not quite. Yeah.
Maybe for a couple of weeks, I suppose. And you had some connection to Östersund too, right? Because I have that Östersund hat.
Yeah, you mentioned it. They have. I watched the World Cup skiing and biathlon, especially biathlon. I really love biathlon, and Östersund is one of their stops. On the
Okay,
World
so
Cup circuit.
for people that don't know what two sports are in the biathlon, it's shooting and cross country skiing, right?
That's right.
Seems like an interesting combination.
It's
but I'm
super-
sure at some point in history that was a needed skill, right?
Right, I think it came from training because like the ski patrols would have to ski through all these areas, but then be able to shoot too.
Oh.
I think so. You know.
Shoot game or shoot outlaws or
Well, like I mean, there's actual even the U.S. had
soldiers. Yeah.
we had like ski patrol soldiers who would ski into enemy territory, would have their guns and whatnot. But the sport is really fascinating to me anyway, because like you're doing this really high intense workout, but then you have to calm yourself down and be able to shoot.
Yeah, because to be able to shoot when you're breathing hard like that.
Yep. You need good recovery because you have to like usually they kind of like start back. Your pacing is really important. You know how hard you go out like the first lap, second lap, and such, and then also like usually they kind of slow down into the range. And then it gets really intense from the spectator's point because like someone can be up ahead, but then they miss a bunch of shots, and there's always like, are they gonna make it? Are they not? And yeah, once you start getting into it, it's a really fascinating sport.
Wow.
Because some people are better shooters but slower skiers. Some are like super fast skiers. Sometimes they come from like they'll race on the World Cup skiing and then they'll switch over to biathlon, and then they'll tear it up on the track, but then they'll miss a bunch of shots and like ruin their chances. Yeah, it's a great sport.
Yeah, I've watched it, but I guess I've never really taken the time to understand the intricacies of it. But that's like any sport, I guess. Like the more you really understand what's going on, probably the more you enjoy it.
So how many books total do you have now? Because
I have 3 stamp poems. I think I have 3 nature series ones, and I have my little tiny poems. And I have a guided journal. I love this thing. I don't know if it was the right name, but Change Your Life Journal. Just 52 different activities that are really, if you have a passion for working on yourself or want to work on yourself for your life. I love this thing. And then kind of on the same theme, I have this one I think was maybe right before the World Stamp Poems, and after it's I'm the Boss of My Bears, and this was inspired by a girlfriend's daughter who had when she was little had temper tantrums, and I spent a weekend with them, and I thought, oh my gosh, I want to help this little girl. And I knew I had some techniques from some of the training that I used to do in healthcare, and so I wrote I'm the Boss of My Bear. So it's a children's book to help them manage emotions, but it really works for adults too because it's got a simple process in it. It's interactive, and it's simple, of course, to understand, and so I really like this book, and my niece illustrated it, which is kind of cool.
Well, I was gonna say,
because I can't draw.
I noticed that right away. It's a really cute illustration, and I didn't know that was your niece.
And she came up with, it's 2 bears. You're struggling with, you've got your good bear and your bad bear, and she came up with the concept of the good bear had a scarf on, so you could differentiate the two. And of course, one's got a grumpier face, and but she's got the actions, and it was really a fun partnership to do that with her.
That's cool. So is she a professional illustrator?
She's 15 years old, and she did this one.
Wow.
So, and I think she's gone on to do some other things. But it was really her first sort of published work, and so I think she's still likes to do different kinds of art. But yeah, so I guess I'm kind of all over the place, but a lot of nature-based poetry. And travel, I think it's such a great way when you go back to our travel so I love to write poems when I'm traveling, and it's such a great way to inform your photographs and really make them come alive, because you have, and you know, your reader of your photo book isn't going to read a whole page, but they'll read a poem, and they can get the feeling of the place and the smells and the sights, and that coupled with the pictures, you really get an experience of that place, not only for, you know, when you're showing someone, but when you go back and reminisce and you look at this book, and it can just takes me back to, you know, a glacier in Norway, or, you know, it just, because you could really feel that experience through all your senses through that poem. So I think that's such a great way to travel.
So you don't make people sit through the photo slideshow. You make them sit through a poetry reading. You want to come over and hear my poems about my travels?
Yay! Although, you know, people they at least they ask. I would think they're sincere for the poems to be posted.
I make that joke, but I do that sometimes. Mm-hmm. In fact, I think you saw my one from Tulum. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I love
Sometimes
that.
Sometimes it just hits you.
I love that. It's like you can have this gathering and share this experience, and
I don't usually intentionally write poems in that I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna write a poem right now. But every once in a while, and it doesn't happen all that often, every once in a while I'll be like, something will just kind of hit me, and I'm like, I gotta get that down.
Yeah.
And then I just...
Yeah, and then it just comes out.
And then what I do with it, I don't throw it on Facebook. I've done that a couple through Instagram.
Sure.
I think the last one, the one that you saw, was on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. That's nice to and you know, and it's a great way to experience a moment or a place too, because the process of the poem really immerses you in that spot, you know, and what you're hearing and seeing, and pieces of the culture and things that you've learned come out. Sometimes words like there are a few Hawaiian words floated into those poems, and even when I was moving back from Oregon, and so I was driving over 2,000 miles, that is, my car, and my parents had come along, and so I was taking the time to write poems, because we went through so many different parts of the country. And now I still, you know, it maybe was a 2-page poem, not real long because it was just kind of short stanzas, but really a neat sort of, here's the country and here's how it changes, and that made that trip special for me. Even though we were just getting from one place to another, it made the trip special and made it into an experience. And I can go back and remember, because I don't always remember things. I think that maybe is part of resilience, is you don't remember a lot of details, but poems for me, like photographs, are ways for me to remember, oh yeah, I remember that steak dinner that we had in Montana, and this cool place with the brands on the boards, on the floorboards. You know, I wouldn't necessarily remember that, but when I read that poem, it comes back. It just comes flooding back.
What is your writing process like? I think we talked about that a little last time, but
yeah, you know, it's like what you just said. It strikes you, and then you just have to get it down, and you write it. And then there's other times where, like, I'm in a place and I'm sitting on the beach, and or even just in the woods, sitting in a stand of birch trees, and I'm like, this is a perfect spot, and I want to mark this moment. So I'll sit down and I just kind of wait, and then it starts coming. So sometimes it starts with a feeling or an image, or someone says a word, or you see a thing and then it sparks it. Or sometimes I intentionally just let it come. Just, you know, and every once in a while there's one that I feel like I have to work at, but not very often. You know, if there's something important that I want to write about, or I've got the start of something, you know, sometimes it'll take a little bit more work, and I'll, you know, scratch or, you know, change a few things around, but mostly I let it be organic. I try not to be such an editor. I've worked with a lot of different poets and with different styles, and you know, there's some that are, there's kind of a spectrum. Some like me that are sort of more organic. It's its own creature. How it comes out is what it is. And then there's other folks who are more, they really want it to be perfect in every word speak, and they edit and edit and edit and edit. So, you know, I think poets kind of fall on that spectrum somewhere.
I think it's interesting because most fiction writers will tell you, you know, screw your inspiration, just get your ass in the chair and start typing away, right? Like, because you have to. If you're gonna write a novel,
Yeah,
that's
a
a
lot
slog.
of time.
It's a marathon, and you're just not gonna. You're never gonna get it done if you. But on the other hand, so I've since COVID especially, I've been writing a lot of music.
Wow.
And music is kind of the same as poetry in that, and I've been listening to a lot of podcasts with songwriters. You know, this is something I didn't have when I was a musician 20 years ago, but you can really get inside like what people their process like, and they all pretty much say the same thing. It's like you can't sit down to write a song, but you have to put yourself in the place where the song will come to you. In other words, like Jeff Tweedy said something along these lines where he's like, yeah, I never like intentionally write a song, but I do intentionally sit with my guitar or a keyboard or some kind of instrument where I'm ready for that, and then it'll come to me. And I don't know when. Might not that day.
And don't you think you kind of almost train yourself if there's this spot by the window in this chair with this cup of tea, like your body knows that when you sit in that spot, then the words or the music come.
I think that might be part of it. I think some of it's just like, I mean, I know there's different ways of doing it. For me, the music always comes first, and then I add the words afterwards. And
that seems harder.
It's one of those things where here's the process too. It's like I would do like ghost words, so I'd be just like saying nonsense that fits the beat and fits the making phrasings, and then eventually those phrasings kind of turn into something, or the idea germinates after I do it enough times. So I might get like a phrase here and there, and then I kind of build out the skeleton, and then I might actually like write at some point once I've got the melody. So I'm ghost singing the melody, and I thought that's probably a weird way to do it, but then I realized no, that's how everyone does. That's how most songwriters do it.
Oh, really?
Or I shouldn't say most. But I know a lot of songwriters do that. Huh. So you write the music first, and then you like ghost sing a melody to it. And I don't try to rush it, because a lot of times like I don't know, maybe some people get the melody right away. A lot of times it changes and changes and changes until it's something I like. Then I'm like, okay, now it's ready.
And you know when it's ready.
And the words kind of like usually the chorus just kind of comes. I don't put a lot of effort into it. I'll tweak it a little bit, but the basic chorus kind of comes. I don't know how it happens. Well, it's weird.
My dad calls it, I think I said last time that we did a podcast, he calls it divine inspiration. Like it, it does feel like that, like it's coming down to you, and you just are the vessel that then regurgitates it out.
Which is funny, because I guess I am basically writing poetry, right?
Yes, you are. Yeah. Powerful. I mean, such a music. Music is very powerful, and it's a poetry.
And how about those rap guys, right? Like that's pure poetry.
Yeah. And I wish I could. I've had a couple of people over the years ask me if I could write some lyrics, and it requires you to rhyme and to understand the off rhyme, because if you look at lyrics, they don't rhyme. They sort of kind of, when it's sung, rhyme, but it's an off rhyme. And I think that is a different skill to be able to write that.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, you just know what words sound enough that then it keeps that lyrical.
Yeah, but you always question yourself too. You're like, is this am I flubbing this, or am I like, right? Like, I mean, there's always that self-doubt that creeps in too. Like it sounds good to me, but is this cheesy to someone who knows this stuff? I don't know. But
do you sing it then to hear what it would sound like then?
Oh yeah.
And then play it back for yourself?
I like the creation.
I guess I didn't know you sang. I knew you were musical, but I didn't know that.
Well, the last time we did the podcast, like I hadn't really been, I wasn't writing at all. And it was, I dig my guitar out and I'd play a little bit. I usually play or maybe sing other cover songs basically, and every once in a while it was more like a therapy almost.
Yeah.
And then during COVID, I had a lot more time on my hands for a few months, and it was that combined with like starting to see some creators on YouTube and like talking about their process. And for some reason, I just like went down the rabbit hole. I was like down the music rabbit hole, and I was studying all this stuff that I hadn't thought about since I was a music major in college.
Yeah. Okay.
But now I cared about it, and I was coming at it from a place where like I want to understand this. I want to like, now I'm like geeking out about this, but I'm coming at it from my own standpoint.
Yeah, for a more confident, mature standpoint of a person who's been in the world and now can bring all that experience to bear with it.
Well, it's just it's so easier to educate yourself on things when it's like something you care about and you're not forced to. It's like you're coming at it from your own perspective instead of having it. You must learn X, Y, and Z for the test next week.
I know, budget work lately at work.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I think that was, COVID's such a horrible thing. No one would really wish it on anyone. But I think the silver lining, if you can call it that, was that time to get to know yourself and to dive into a rabbit hole.
Well,
because you could.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like, hey, the situation is what it is. Let's take the good parts out of it, right?
Yeah.
Like you can focus on the bad, but and there definitely, obviously, COVID was a rough thing on a lot of people. But hey, like I'm not gonna like not take advantage of. If it offered some gifts as well. I think it'd be disappointing not to take advantage of those.
And I know I had several poems come out of me, and I wrote so much more, talking about just getting to be with me and really. I feel like I know myself pretty well because I am a poet, but I think I got to go even deeper, and I got to really just love to be with myself and appreciate myself without all the busyness and the social obligations that we were released from. And I thought, oh my gosh, and now I kind of crave that.
Social obligations.
Now I kind of crave. The first time I got to go to something social was like, I thought it was like, oh my god, it was the best thing on earth, and it was like a cabbie sale. So I knew I was going to spend money on clothes, and I never spend money on clothes, but I was just so excited to be around people. But now I kind of crave. Yeah, I'd love to have at least a day on my weekend where I just have it for me, and I get to go on my little spot that I love in the woods and just be and write and rock and read and nap and.
Oh man, I remember the first day I had like 3 or 4 things on a Saturday I had to do, and I was like, what is this? This is what things used to be like. I'm going back to it. No. Go back to where it was like, well, it's Friday, I got nothing to do till Monday morning. Okay.
So do you feel like your pendulums kind of come to the middle a little bit? Like I feel like I'm smarter about what I say yes to than I maybe was. A little bit.
That's interesting. I'm glad I made the cut then.
Yes.
Yes, in some ways. I've definitely learned to be more protective of my time, but also there's just a lot of stuff I have to do either way. Like, I think at work I've been a little more, if you're a journalist, there's kind of a pressure to like go to everything.
I bet.
And I've definitely dialed that back a bit. I say I don't have to be it everywhere. I can, like one of the interesting changes was a lot of meetings are online now, so.
Oh, so you don't have the travel
They'll
time.
broadcast them on YouTube, so, which is great. So instead of like working a 12-hour day and like watching all these meetings going to these meetings at night, I can like put them, I can just watch them the next day.
That is nice.
And so, and then it's for like finding that balance, because I don't want to like just, I don't want to be one of those journalists that just like never leaves the house. I don't think that's right either. So some kind of balance, like you said, it's finding that middle of the pendulum swing. But
and you have some freelancers helping you out now.
Yep, Gina's back on and Pat's back on, so
Nice.
I think she'll have a story about Dawn coming soon.
She will. We're gonna meet here at Whitewater Music Hall next week. So.
Cool. Good place to meet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So let me ask you about when it comes to poetry. Obviously, we have books, so books are meant to be read. But then there's the performative aspect of poetry that, honestly, we haven't gotten much around here. You know, they pop up every once in a while, but there's no one doing regular poetry. And I wonder how you feel about that. Do you feel like it's a different type of writing that lends itself more to spoken? Back in business.
Hey, great. Well, and it gave me a moment to think about your question, and yeah, I'm going to pay attention to the poems I choose when I do the reading with Dasha, the Wisconsin Poet Laureate, next Wednesday. Yeah, because that's an interesting question. I assume I choose thinking it's a subjects that people will be interested in. Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
The first time I read part of my first book out loud, I was like, I wish I had done this before the little presentation, because I was like, oh man, this is what it sounds like out loud. It was jarring to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How did the audience respond?
They seemed to think it was okay. Yeah. But it was jarring to me, because I'm like, oh, this is what it sounds out loud. I should do this more often.
Yeah, it's been in my head. Yeah, I tend to like to read my poems out loud. Well, because there's a sound quality in the poem, so I want to hear it. And sometimes a word needs to be tweaked or something because it doesn't quite fit.
Definitely.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, I'm gonna ponder on that one. Because I don't write differently, but I might choose differently for presenting in front of a group. And I think I'm fortunate because I've got a training and development background, and I did modeling for a long time, so I've been in front of an audience a lot. So I think it gives me, if you've been in your skivvies in front of 300 people at a bridal show, then you don't really mind reading your poem in front of people.
I forgot to mention Dawn was
trendsetter.
Basically an underwear model, right? At some point.
Well, it was just one particular show.
One, okay.
Yeah, but
you did a lot of modeling.
Some amateur things and some photography, and we did runway at the mall. We were talking, and when you did the article about the mall coming down and had asked about memories at the mall, and I said, well, the Trend Center's modeling group, that was really a fun time. I was young then, we had a group of young folks, and I got to actually run one of so it was sort of my first management job, being, oh gosh, how old was I, 18, 19, 17, something like that. First management job to be in charge of this particular show, where I got to work with the vendors and even write the copy and do the choreographing and model in it. So I got to do it from top to bottom, and it was really quite an experience for someone young. Of course, when you're doing it for free, then you get experience, but that's what you need, is experience when you're young. And it was really, so the mall was a good place to pick up some skills, and it was a fun place to work. And now that era is gone.
I definitely did my time there.
You did? What stores did you work in?
Oh gosh, I ran a sunglass store.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, let's see what else. I worked in the kitchen place for a little while. I worked at the Auntie Annie's.
Oh.
That was bad. I ate a lot of cookies.
Yeah, God, no, you could resist that.
And let's see. Oh, I worked at the mattress store for like 2 weeks.
That'd be boring.
It was boring. Like, there was really nothing to do because not many people came in. They would actually give you like golf clubs, and you were supposed to basically practice putting. And the idea was people come out and be like, you get to golf at work.
So that was the hope, to get them in the
store? Just to wait for customers. What can I, it was basically like a little excuse to get them to talk to you so you could sell them something. I sold one mattress in the 2 weeks I was there.
So does that mean you're not good at putting?
Maybe not bad enough, because if I was really bad, people were like, wow, you really suck at that. Yeah, but
sure
I have great mattresses.
That is interesting. Little tidbit there.
Yeah, if you ever own a mattress store, you don't know how to bring people in, or I guess any kind of store, really.
I guess.
Was there anything else I worked at? I feel like there's a couple others.
Well, you were around the mall, weren't you?
I was around the mall. This is my 19 to 23, I think. And then I got a job at SoCom, then I went back to school, and then I became a journalist.
That's all she wrote.
That's all she
So
wrote.
so was it
Down here.
sad for you when the mall came down?
I was surprised at how that I had some sadness about it, because it made sense. Like, you know, when they were talking about it, it's like, well, yeah, it's lost its past its use, and it's not really going to be a mall anymore, right? Like, people aren't going to go shop there much anymore, and there's hardly any stores. But yeah, when I actually started taking it down, I was like, oh man, that is kind of sad. And yeah, Jared and I did a Memories of the Mall podcast, and
Oh, I have to watch that. I would love. Yeah.
you might be in there, like your comments might be in there, because I took a bunch of people's comments and we kind of talked about them on air.
Yeah, it kind of was like, for those of us that worked there or even shopped there or hung out there, it was kind of a coming of age spot for Wausau. You know, so I can see where. And when I came down for the photo shoot with the city, when you came biking by and we set this up, that was my first time seeing the mall down, and what struck me is, oh, you know, God, it's concrete, and oh, you know, the emotion of missing the mall, but then the fact that I could see, you know, because it's a visual obstruction, and now I could see, and it just seemed like this space was so much bigger without this building kind of clogging it up. So it kind of helped me see, you know, for what the next forward into the future and what the next step and the possibilities are. So that it was good to see it. So, you know, if you felt that twinge like we did, you know, come on down and see it.
Come on down, and while you're downtown, I believe a certain someone is going to have something going on at the book festival.
Yeah, the book festival put on by the Marathon County Library System. All kinds of authors. And next Wednesday night, what is it, the 22nd? Here at the Whitewater Music Hall, Dasha Hamilton, who's the Milwaukee and the Wisconsin Poet Laureate, and I will be on stage. And I think it'll be sort of a nice format like this, where we can answer questions and we can talk about poetry and talk about Poet Laureate, which she'll have a lot more to say about that than I will. This is the debut of the announcement of it. And then we'll get, you know, a chance to read. And if you've never got to experience a poet reading their own work, it really is pretty special, because when I say a poem is an interaction between the reader and the writer, and it becomes its own creature because you filter it through your own experiences. But when you hear it read by the author, just the different intonations and the emphasis that they put on there, and the emotion that you can feel, and looking at their face, you really get a different interpretation. And sometimes you can understand what message they were putting in there. Not that that's the most important message. You know, the reader gets their own message, but you get a little bit more insight into what the reader was going for, or the writer was going for, when you can hear them presenting, and it's a pretty powerful thing.
Are you supposed to snap afterwards?
Oh, maybe, I guess. Snap, clap, hoorah.
Isn't that the poetry thing to do? I mean, snap. I don't know.
I don't know. I just
Maybe
remember that from Legally Blonde.
Yeah.
Snap!
I was watching this German show, and it was interesting because when someone gave a presentation, they were doing on the desk.
That was their clapping?
They were clapping, yeah, and I was like, oh, that's weird. They just do, or actually, I think they were knocking. They all knocked on the desk.
Which would be louder, probably, then.
I'm like, kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting. It's like those little cultural quirks always fascinate me.
And aren't those the interesting things? Like, I love kind of collecting those as you get to see the world.
And you can see the world through Dawn's poetry, through her stamps.
Through the World Stamp Poem with the wonderful photograph done by yours.
I really like the one on the back. That's my favorite.
I know that one. Look at that little cheesy smile. Can you see that? And and it was kind of a tricky thing, because we wanted it. I think it was. What thing was your idea to do it by the peace sculpture, right near here, because it's the globe and it's peace. And it's about bringing people together and understanding other cultures, and but that's tricky because that's kind of a large thing, and then you've got this person, and then this tiny little stamp, and how do you show it all?
Right.
And you nailed it.
We should have got you a big stamp, like those big checks. Just got a big stamp.
Post the
Maybe next, maybe book 4, stamp book 4.
Book 4. Oh yeah, I'm kind of resisting because I'm like, I have 3 stamp poem books already, but like.
No, for stamps already,
I
huh?
know, but I love the stamps. I mean, do you guys love stamps? Like, if you haven't noticed stamps, like when you get an envelope, look, and hopefully you have people that send you like the good commemorative stamps and not just the generic ones you use to pay bills. Use those ones for paying the bills. But when you send a card or a postcard or something to a friend.
Yeah, it does that. Yeah, use stamps is what she says.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Stamp. And you know, and for a while when I was writing this book, the World Stamp Poems, I went to there's a stamp club at the Wausau Library, and Monday nights, I think once a month, and the loveliest people. And I got a couple of stories for the book because, you know, of course they love stamps and they had been many places and had these wonderful stories to share. And of course they gave me stamps too, so do have more stamps waiting from homes. So I'd recommend, if you are interested in that, you know, look at what the library has to offer, all kinds of interesting things, and that stamp club meets at the library.
Well, Dawn Anderson, you're a wonderful human being.
You are too, Brandon.
Tell folks one more time how to come see you. It was Wednesday, you said, at Whitewater Music Hall. What was
Wednesday the 22nd from 7 till 8 o'clock here at the Whitewater Music Hall. You can see myself and Dasha, who is the Wisconsin Poet Laureate, which will be kind of cool to have the two of us together. Learn about poetry, have a good beer, hang out, do some snaps.
Do some snaps.
Do some snaps.
Have some beers. I think you said that, but we'll say that again. Beers always bear repeating. All right. Well, as I always say, keep it awesome.
Keep it awesome.
You guys keep it awesome too, and we will see you next time.